Yo, what's going on, everyone? It's Baze here, and I'm back again with another Mythic Plus guide. Today I'll be covering Arakara. They did have a few changes in this dungeon, so I'll be covering those, but I'll also just remind everyone what's important to kick in these packs as well. So, starting off with the first area, usually you're going to pull all this with the mini-boss, Ixen. It's going to cast Horrifying Shrill. You'll want to make sure you kick that as your primary kick, because it will fear the entire group. This is very important to focus on because I've had plenty of experiences where I'll either kick another cast on a mob that's going off or a bolt cast, and then the fear will just end up going off on everyone. So make sure you guys are kicking the fear. If you are pugging this, either say you're going to kick the fear or have someone dedicated just for that fear. That way you can kick the other cast, which is the Attendant, which casts Resonate Barrage, and it has a bolt cast as well. So you can just use your extra cast on those. You can also CC them. But ideally, you're going to pull everything here in your first pull, Lust, and you're going to want to use any utility defensives you have here, as this is known as a hard pull in a hierarchy because everything starts to hurt a lot. So going into the next pull, there is a change they made with Venomous Spit. You used to be able to kick this, however it is now an instant cast, so you need to make sure you have a poisonous spell in this key. Also, they made it so that there is the Javelin Flyers. They now also cast a bleed on the entire group, as you can see on my screen, instead of just on the tank. And in this pull, you also want to make sure you kept that kick the Web Bolt cast there. The last change they made to this is that the Engorged Crawlers no longer explode at low health. So you just have to finish them off yourself now. And the next change they made in this key is the next Lieutenant mob, which is the Knack. Knack no longer... The Pulse AoE still hurts, but it no longer is in range of one-shotting you anymore. They nerfed it by a lot. So other than that, those are the two biggest changes before the first boss that they made. So let's talk about the first boss in this dungeon, Avanoxx. If you've already done this key, they didn't change anything about it. It's still the exact same boss. However, if you haven't done this key before, the way this boss works is it has a set of mobs that spawns in the cocoons. You want to make sure you cleave them down, CC them. Ideally, you want to let them get close to the boss for min-maxing cleave off the boss, so that your melee don't have to target all the way out in the middle of nowhere. So you want to keep the boss near the ads and just CC the ads. They have very little health. It's pretty free, pretty chill. And the next thing the boss will do is cast little swirlies to go out. You just dodge these. Ideally, you want to stack so that way you can min-max your room area. And then the third thing the boss does is a pulsing AoE. Just use any kind of group utility here. So rally, any kind of CD you have for healing, defensive, whatever you got, just pop one. It didn't hurt here. However, we are also scaled up. So in the first week, if you're doing this on a 12, you'll probably be like 690 item level, maybe a little bit higher. We were at 710, I believe, here. So we're going to be a lot tankier here than you guys will be on live. So definitely make sure you use a defensive on that Screech. Other than that, it does a tank hit every now and then. Just use a tank defensive or a healing CD, whichever. And that is the entire fight. It's just rinse and repeat. There's nothing new about it. So after the first boss, you will be doing a massive pull with a Hulking Bloodguard. The Hulking Bloodguard now has a pulsing AoE called Locust Swarm. It used to be just one big hit, but now it's a pulsing AoE. You can stun this if you have the Tailoring Profession ability in this dungeon. If you pick it off the dead spider mobs, you can stun that cast. And the mob also still has its other cast called Bulwark of the Weak, which puts a 50% damage reduction on all nearby mobs. So you want to focus down the Blood Guards. The second most important mob in this pack is the Web Mage. It casts Volley, so you want to have someone kick that at all times. And you also want to have off kicks go to the Bolt cast. Outside of this, the only important mob is the alarm shrill from the beetles. If you do not kick it, they will spawn more mobs, and it is not a fun time. So just make sure you're CCing that mob at all times, and you will be fine in this area. So let's talk about the second boss in this dungeon, Anub. If you've done this dungeon before, they didn't change anything about this fight. However, I'll remind everyone how it works. So the boss is going to do a frontal, and it will charge a random ranged. So you want to make sure you dodge that. If you don't, it'll put a dot on you along with this frontal as well. The boss also is throwing out random dots on random players, so you want to make sure you use a defensive here. It will rotate through everyone first, so it will not go back to back on you. Unless someone is dead, then it does have the potential to do that. You also want to make sure you're kicking in, gripping in, CCing this mob that the boss spawns as well. And then after, the boss will go into intermission. Once the boss goes in intermission, you want to make sure you find your safe spot as soon as possible, and that you have the tank stay on the right side of the boss and everyone else on the left side. The reason for this is because the boss will cast 3 frontal spikes, and if you do not have that on one side, things can get out of hand very quickly. There's a lot of tornadoes going off during this. There's a lot of just things happening here that can kill you. And also, you want to make sure you do not go into the green area at all during intermission, as you will die. Other than that, it's just rinse and repeat. You're just dodging, using defensives, kicking in the mob, and that's it. So, let's talk about the mobs after the second boss. Not much has changed here. Pretty much everything is the exact same. So, for the Blood Overseer, you're going to kick the Venom Volley. This is the main prio kick here. And then the other mobs will just spawn purple puddles under you that will CC you and root you. All you do is just kick that off you or CC it, whichever one you prefer. The one thing they did change in this area is that throughout this middle here, we didn't go that route, but they changed the mob in the middle there to be less deadly, so you can pull it with the 2 back lieutenants now. Other than that, the only thing they did change here was the reinforced drones now put a debuff on the tank, and you just want to make sure you debuff or dispel that. Other than that, it's the exact same thing as it was the first season. Alright, so this is by far the biggest and best change they've made for the entire dungeon, and it is on the final boss, Ki Katal. So previously, if you remember in Season 1, this boss used to be absolutely terrible for melee. And the reason for that is because if you were running a melee comp, you had about 4 melee if you had 3 DPS melees and you had a tank. And sometimes groups even had a melee healer, so maybe even sometimes you're in 5 melee. It was just really melee unfriendly. So what they've done is they've taken the 5 green poisons that spawn waves, and they've reduced it to 3. So it is much easier. This fight is pretty much free now. And for people who haven't done this fight before, the way it works is you're going to DPS the boss. He'll do his 3 poisons. These spawn waves out from the player. As you can tell which direction they're going because it'll indicate, as you can see on my character, to the side. So you want to make sure you're not pointing that at anyone friendly. And then also, the boss will spawn ads throughout the encounter. You want to make sure you kill these ads, the purple blobs, because they spawn safe spots during the intermission suck-in that you can stand in. And then after the intermission, you can kick that off of you or CC it or whatever you want to do. Outside of that, the boss also casts swirlies out throughout the fight. Some little hidden tech here. If you have any kind of movement ability, like a leap or a maybe a freedom works. I'm not sure if freedom works, but if you have a leap or like a rogue chain leap, you can use that to get out of the suck-in. But you have to do it, I think it's at like 0.5 seconds. So it is risky. As you can see, I did get hit on my run. For some reason, it canceled. I'm not sure why it canceled. Maybe I did it too early or too late. I'm not sure. Normally, I'm pretty consecutive with it. But yeah, I did mess it up there. And they did reduce that damage. It used to be a one-shot. Now it does like 50 to 75% of your HP. So you can just use the defensive and live it. However, if you do get hit by this, you do get a damage reduction. I think it's 75%. However, this time I did do it right. So as you can see there, it does work. You can just leap out of it last second. It's no big deal. And that is the entire dungeon. There wasn't many massive changes, but there were some important ones to note. If you guys have been enjoying these guides, please let me know. let me know down in the comments below. I will have 2 more coming out, and then we'll be done for the dungeon series. And then next, I will be putting out heroic boss guides and normal as I kill them on live.